We are back inside City Hall, turning now to Capitol Hill, where lawmakers are looking forward to working with the new Kathy Hochul administration, with some hoping for better lines of communication than they had with Andrew Cuomo. Our Washington, D.C. Bureau reporter Kevin Frey joins me now with more. Good evening, Kevin.
Yeah, good evening, Errol. I've been speaking to several of our members here in Washington about generally their impressions of how the lines of communication worked and how the cooperation worked between the Cuomo administration and the delegation, and how they see that evolving now that Governor Hochul has taken the reins.
She is uniquely positioned to be extremely effective in working with her federal counterparts.
Praise from her former colleagues on Capitol Hill as Kathy Hochul becomes the first New Yorker since Hugh Carey back in the 1970s to call the governor's mansion home after previously serving in Congress.
We have great respect for her. We've had a working relationship with her. She's got experience at every level of government, county, state, and federal.
Hochul won a special election in 2011 and represented a Western New York district for less than 2 years. But during that time, she did make an impression on some.
Coming from upstate New York, etc., there were certain votes that she didn't have to take. She could have had the easy way out. She didn't choose the easy way out.
Hochul takes on her new job at a difficult time, having to lead the state through the next phase of the pandemic, a job that will involve working with Washington. But what about working with New York lawmakers on Capitol Hill? Hochul's predecessor, Andrew Cuomo, received inconsistent reviews when it came to his relationship with the delegation, some offering praise, another suggesting it depended on the member, and yet another calling his interactions with the delegation sporadic.
The relationship between Governor Cuomo and the delegation certainly strengthened in the midst of the pandemic when it was clear that it was all hands on deck.
He didn't serve as a member of Congress, and so I think that relationship was not valued in the same way.
Hochul held a meeting with the delegation last week. Already her willingness to listen being embraced by Democrats and some Republicans alike.
It's her personality to be inclusive, to listen to good ideas, and to develop a strategy to implement good ideas.
Her outreach, even before taking the reins of governor, was very welcomed by the members of the delegation and appreciated that she took the time to just listen to what some of our priority issues are for our districts and how the state can be helpful.
Of course, as to how long that sort of bipartisan praise that you're hearing in this piece might actually last remains to be seen. Nicole Malliotakis, the congresswoman you heard there at the end, representing Staten Island, suggesting to me that she is concerned that the governor will take a more progressive bend going into the future, especially into next year as we enter into the Democratic primary season and the governor's race really heats up, Errol.
So, Kevin, it sure doesn't hurt that billions of dollars that are being approved for Congress, and they're not done yet, will pass through Albany, right? And it'll be the discretion of the governor that determines how and when that money makes it into the individual members' districts.
Right. I mean, you've already seen over the past couple weeks, for instance, just when it comes to the rental assistance, for example, that was coming from the federal government going through Albany, going out to the local municipalities. That was a pressure point where a lot of lawmakers here in Washington were very frustrated with the Cuomo administration, for example. So we'll see if Hochul is able to follow through on that. But that sort of coordination, especially in the midst of a pandemic, especially as they continue to work on these aid packages, and then on top of that, the infrastructure bills, that sort of coordination and cooperation is going to be key.
Okay. There's a lot coming up, and we'll talk with you about that as the legislation rolls down. Thanks very much, Kevin.